Hey everybody, welcome to the Jesus in a Dream talk show, where we only talk about important things.
It's a good opening line.
Thank you. Our first one ever. That's how the original opening line happened. I was just saying stuff and then it worked. Today we got a special guest. I'm joined by Zac and Tori Anderson. Insert applause track here.
Yay!
And
by the massive crowd that's right off camera.
If you're listening to this on Spotify, we're going to do just a little bit of a different format with our guests. We're going to try something new. If you're watching on YouTube, you obviously see that it looks different. And instead of it being more of a podcast format, I'm just going to ask some questions, allow them to talk, and just say whatever they want to say. And we're going to have some good little nuggets for anybody. Today's topic is marriage because they are obviously married. Why don't you, Tori, tell us just a little bit about how you guys met and started dating?
Yeah, we met a long time ago. We met as freshmen in high school. We're friends first. And then we started, I guess we were interested in each other. And I would say we started dating when we were in between sophomore and junior year of high school. And that was a good time, high school dating. And then we went to college together, Northwestern. And we actually took a break, I guess you could say, back then when people took breaks. We took a break when we went into college because we didn't want to be too attached at the hip and we wanted to be able to just experience college as freshmen. Ended up that one of his roommates was friends with my roommate, so we ended up just hanging out all the time again. Anyways, we started dating again second semester of freshman year of college. And then ever since then, it's been, just history. So we took it more seriously in college, though.
Yeah, we got married in 2018. And so that's 5 years ago. And so we met in 2009.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it is a long time ago. That's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the right amount of math? Yeah, that's 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow, congrats. That's longer than I've been alive. So... I already have my first question. The break. You said back then people take breaks. People take breaks all the time. I think that's part of a lot of people's stories actually is we dated, we took a break, we got together. For a lot of people though, you don't get back together. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions. How did you guys know that okay, the break needs to end and we're ready to do this again? And maybe what were some of the questions that were going through both of your minds as you were considering what that could look like?
So I always knew that I wanted to be with Zac, even from high school. I even have a prayer journal of me praying about it and asking the Lord, either take him out of my life or keep him in my life because I didn't want to mess around. And so I always knew that I wanted to be with Zac and marry Zac. And I would literally pray to God and I would say, if this is who I'm supposed to marry, let it happen. And it did. So praise God. But I think for Zac, he had a lot of questions more so on his end than I did for me. I was just giving him the space that he needed to answer questions that he had and to kind of grow into the man that God wanted him to become. And so I just kind of was waiting and just sitting there, right? But I also was I'm not going to wait forever. And so I did do the whole DTR, determine the relationship, and had those tough conversations with him and tough conversations with friends. And they were you need to do something about it. And I'm but he needs time, So I did take some time, but for me, it was just, what does Zac need? And it was also just a lot of praying to the Lord of again, same things over and over again. If he's meant to be in my life, then make it clear and make it evident that this is where I'm supposed to go with my relationship with him and where we're supposed to go together. Otherwise, make it very clear that this is not where we're supposed to go. But he had a lot of questions on his own of things that he had to answer before he was ready to actually commit fully into a serious relationship.
Yeah, for me, there was definitely one specific moment that I think of where, and leading up to that, which is kind of why another reason we took the break, is my parents never liked the dating as a fun thing, and they were marriage is very serious, and so therefore dating should be very serious as well. And so they just never liked the idea of just just the whole idea of like high school dating altogether. They just were not really interested in that idea at all. And so leading up to that, now being in college, they were like, hey, this is, we want you to take this very seriously because, that's where my parents found each other, was at college. And so they were like, don't just be like having fun and hanging out with people if you want to get married, because this is a time to be seriously think about it. So that's like in my head. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to be serious about it. I do want to be married, and I don't want to waste time and just have fun and stuff like that. And I was like, I do. And so, but the conflict was because I was thinking, okay, if I want to be married, what is the type of woman I want to be married to? And then here I am with Tori, and I'm happy. I am comfortable. I feel like we're growing together. I feel like she challenges me. All the things that I want in a woman, Tori had. And yet I had this image of what, everybody has like this idea of like, oh, a perfect woman would be this and that and this and that. And then I came to this realization where I was like, hold on. Because I was like picturing, like, what if I was with that person? And I was like, I don't think I would enjoy it, because like I was thinking of this like someone who's like, oh, they're gonna like want to like climb mountains and like hike all the time and stuff. And then I was like, but do I actually do that? Like, I love the idea of going and climbing mountains and hiking, but the type of person that I'm like imagining is someone who would do that like every month or something. I was like, I wouldn't actually like that. And so then I was like thinking through, like, would I actually enjoy being with this ideal person? And the answer came out with no. I was like, and I don't even think I'd want to be the person that person wouldn't want to be with me. And so then it was like changing my mindset. And I was like, Tori loves camping, and we go camping like 2 to 3 times a year, which is like the perfect amount. I was like, I love that. And so then it was like realizing, like, which is probably why we naturally worked together and it naturally felt good, even though I had all this stuff going on in my head of like, when I'm with Tori, I was like, this feels like the right relationship. But in my head, I was going, there's got to be more red flags somewhere, right? Like, that's what I was thinking of, like, why isn't this the right relationship? She's not the person in my mental checklist. But when I was with Tori, it was like this, like everything about who I was, it felt was so complimentary that it's just why we stuck together forever throughout high school and into college. And it was just like, we took this break, and then it like made me think, it's like, I'm about to let go of the person that is a perfect match. And the other thing too is like, because we were together so much, we just had so many shared memories that were all like good, and all just at that point, we've been together so long. It's like, I don't want to separate and do anything that's like not like, literally won't see Tori for like 4 hours, and I'll come back and like, I have so much to tell you. It's like every detail. So yeah, anyways, so yeah, that was where that break was definitely like that big defining moment was me going, I think like I need to DTR with the imaginary person that I think is who I should be with. And then, so it was like, okay, that person is not a good fit for me. And I don't think I would be happy if I found that exact person and was dating them. I don't think it would work out, and I don't think I'd be happy. And it was like that moment, where you kind of realize like, oh, the person of my dreams, I don't think I'd actually enjoy that, because that's just how it is. It's unreal. Like, when you imagine what's perfect for yourself, it's not actually very accurate and is unrealistic. But yeah,
that's a good story.
That's the zoom in on the break section.
Yeah, and I'm gonna dwell here for a second, because I think the break section is, even though like you guys had met each other, took a break, ended up with each other, I think for a lot of people, single people, I should say, the break section can just feel like normal life. Either you're on the side of, I need to make a decision because there's decisions that need to be made, like Zach, or on the Tori side of things, I want to be patient, I want to trust God and all of that stuff. And you gave really good insight into the decision-making process. I want to hop back over to you, Tori, and talk about, you said something particular that I was like, I want you to say more on that, where you said you prayed prayers over and over and over again. That's really hard to do. Why did you continue to pray the same prayer over? And what would you maybe say to people who are maybe in that season where like they know God has something for them, because they've heard it or just believe it, but they've prayed that same prayer for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
So I do a prayer journal instead of just praying. And I do that because one reason is because then I can physically see it, right? And I can also just mentally like let it go as well, because I've written it out and it's been to the Lord. And the reason why I do it over and over and over again is because anytime I think of something that I'm worrying about, I'm like, I have to get it down. So even if it's the same thing over and over and over again, I know the Lord hears my prayers, but it's also just, for me, it's a way to stop worrying about it. But then I've also, because I've done a prayer journal, I go back and I look at the things that I've prayed about, and I've seen almost, if not all of them, answered in one way or another. And so even though I pray about it over and over and over and over and over again, because I did pray about that, I now have not just one answered prayer, but many answered prayers. And I don't know, I guess I don't know why I prayed over and over again, other than, like I said, it just gives me peace, and it helps to relieve any worry or anxiety that I have about it. And then I also just give it to the Lord, and it puts trust in him. And I'm just like, all right, God, it's on you. Like, I can't control the situation. I can't control Zac. I can't control his future and what he decides to do with our relationship. I can be here and I can be present, but I'm going to have faith in the Lord. And, if I give it to you, then now it's in your hands, and whatever happens, your will be done. And, then I'm like, okay, that is how God wanted it to pan out. That's how it's going to happen. And then, I don't know, as for advice of people with prayer, the only thing I can say is prayers do get answered. It might not look the way that you want it to look, and it might not happen in the time frame that you want it to happen in. Like, to be honest, I would have loved for Zac to pick up the pace a little bit so that I wasn't sitting around waiting for him to say, yes, you're the one for me. But it did happen, and it wasn't on my time, but it was on God's time, because the Lord knew what Zac needed. And so, yeah, it might not happen when you want it to, and it might not look the way you want it to either, but a prayer will get answered if the Lord's will is to be done, and that's how he wants it to, pan out.
That's good. So you guys have been married, you said 5 years now? That's crazy.
It'll be 6 in July. Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is how years work. Yeah, let's, so we've heard Zac's perspective many times on the podcast. If you've been listening for any amount of time, you've heard Zac tell the story of coming to Hastings. And I want to get your perspective on it, because Zac was, and I don't even know if I've even heard your perspective, your side of this, but to give just a little bit of a recap for anybody who maybe wasn't listening before, Zac and I sat down a couple of years ago at this point. Zac was at basically a fork in the road of where he wanted to go. And basically I was like, hey, I would love if you came to Hastings and worked. It was half joking, but it was also no, I would actually love this. And then obviously through a lot of prayer, and he's told the story many times, with the house and everything. But on your side of things, what was it like taking that jump into, I guess, just Hastings, or the season of life that you're even in right now, where, the studio? Maybe tell the people about what you do for work as well. But yeah, I just want to hear your perspective on maybe the last 3-4 years.
Yeah. So Hastings was not on the top of my list. I will just say that. I have family in the South Metro. So that's 30 minutes from Hastings and where we live now. And so my ideal was to be closer to family. We were thinking about having a kid at the time. So I was I want to be close to family so that, they can help raise the kid and all this stuff. Right. We were going back, I remember when Zac told me that you said that you wanted him to live in Hastings, and you were very adamant. You were I'm speaking it now. You're going to live in Hastings. It's going to happen. And I was no.
I don't think I was that forward.
I was no. I was Caleb is one with the Spirit, and if he says something, it will probably happen. And sure enough, it did. But I remember thinking that's too far, because I work downtown. I work in downtown Minneapolis for an ad agency. And I work in their accounting department. And at the time, with COVID and everything, it was a work from home policy. It still is, which praise God. But I was nervous living in Hastings, because if and when we ever go back into the office, it's a big commute. And I think about, now that we do have a son, I think about all the time that it would spend going into the office and coming home. Like that's a big part of my day, and it would just take time away from spending time with my kid. And so that's a prayer on my heart right now, is that. But anyways, so when we were looking at houses, Hastings was literally, when you look at homes, it's like a radius, right? And it was like on the far end of the radius. I was like, that, if we get a home there, that is like the last straw, like not gonna happen, right? And so we were actually in Delaware at the time visiting my brother. And Zac had come home early because he had a shoot or something. And we were I was looking at the housing market just casually, and I saw the house in Hastings. And I was like, oh, it's in our budget. It's exactly what we're looking for. Zac, you have to go look at it. I'm still in Delaware, so you have to go. Zac went and looked at it. I was still in Delaware. And in the time that I was in Delaware, Zac looked at it, we put an offer, and an offer got accepted. And I hadn't even seen the house in person, which I never thought in my wildest dreams would ever happen. So then I come home and I'm like, all right, what house did we just buy, right? It ended up being perfect, but I was a little hesitant because Hastings is a small town. And so I'm like, I'm not used to only having a Walmart to shop at, right? Like I'm used to Aldi, Target, like all of the variety. Okay, sorry.
And Coborn. And now we have a Fleet Farm.
That's true. The Fleet Farm, that was a gift from the Lord, because that was the best thing.
Was here when we bought the house, I've been like, don't even need to look at it.
Fleet Farm was the first store we brought our son into when we were like, this is the first store. We're not going anywhere but Fleet Farm. So I was a little nervous because it was a little bit more of a smaller town feel than I was used to. But now that we've been here, I absolutely love it. Like it's quiet and it's peaceful. I remember laying in bed the first night we ever like laid in our house, and I was just like, it's so quiet. Like it's so quiet and peaceful. And the location of our home is great. There's a little park down the street. So like our son can go and play, and I can literally just like walk out and see him from our driveway. But yeah, it was definitely...
That's not happening right now,
No,
right?
no, not right now. No.
He's like 7 months
old. He's like 10 months old. Just go ahead. No. But yeah, so it's actually perfect. And because I'm still working from home, like that's also been a blessing as well. And I'm not having to sacrifice a lot of my time just trying to commute to work and spending time in the office. But yeah, so it was definitely in the beginning, I was like, I don't know, Hastings kind of far. But honestly, it has been a blessing, not even just where we live, but also with Zac's career and his spiritual walk too, and being able to work like alongside you. And like, shout out to you. Like, honestly, you have been a blessing in our lives for many, many reasons. But yeah, so it's been it literally has been a huge blessing living in Hastings and seeing Zac's career take off, and also seeing him grow spiritually as well. And not to say that some of that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't lived in Hastings. Sure, it could have still happened no matter where we live, but I think that this is exactly where the Lord wants us. And I honestly don't imagine ever leaving at the moment. Like if we ever move to a new home, or our dream is to get land and build a house, like we would probably stay in this area and just build around here. But yeah.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I love having you guys here. So, I mean, I'm glad it worked out.
PSA, more people move to Hastings. It's awesome.
Yeah, come down to Hastings.
Trying to get my sister and her husband to move down here, but we'll see what happens there.
That would be so awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit now about future, some like your own dreams and whatnot. Zac and I get to sit here and talk about those all the time, but I want to hear more about yours. Obviously, you have Sebastian now, and you said you work at an ad agency. But when you think about the future for you, for your family, what are some of those things that you're praying about now, maybe even currently? Like, what are some of the things in your prayer journal, if you wouldn't mind sharing? You don't have to,
so I mean, I pray a lot. The one thing in my prayer journal is I actually pray for other people before I pray for myself. And so I pray for people that the Lord has placed on my heart in that moment. So it might not be the same person every time, and it might not be a lot of people. It might just be 3 or 4 people that I pray for that night. But when it comes to my life and my vision and what I want my future to look like, obviously I want to keep raising a family. And I would love to have, 3 kids. We've talked about 3 kids running around. So we'll see what the Lord does with that. And then my other dream is I would love to get land and build a house and raise a family on that property, but not even just that, but also I have a passion for youth. I'm a youth leader for our church. And I've been doing youth for, I don't know, probably 7, 8, I don't know, maybe even 10 years I've been doing youth as a youth leader. And I have a big passion for them because they are our future. And so if I don't speak life into them, then what does that mean for the future that we have? And so one big long-term goal that I have is that I would love to be able to, on our property, build a center or a place where youth can come and hang out and do retreats with youth groups. Because I found that as a youth leader, as the years go on and on and on, retreats get more expensive and kids can't afford it. And so I would love to be able to provide a space where youth groups can come and bring their kids and be able to connect and build as a youth group and make it as cheap as possible. And I feel like if it's on my own property and I love to cook, I'll cook for an army, you know what I mean? And I'll be able to do that so that they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff and they can just come and experience the Lord without concerns about, wow, this costs too much, or I have to be able to pay for my meals 3 days, and stuff like that. So that's like my big dream. And we'll see where the Lord takes that. But
I love that. That's a great dream. That's so good. Zac, how about you? I mean, I think we've talked about this a couple of times, but I think it's different with like this being the sole focus of this episode is marriage. And how does Tori specifically, but maybe even like the bigger, what is it? Unit of marriage? Not unit of marriage. What is that called? I don't know. The construct. I'm not going to say anything on what I was about to say, but the institution of marriage. How has that affected, I guess, you, like even like she said, like, you feel like you're now going in a good direction with your career. How we talk about like all the spiritual stuff, the practical stuff on this podcast a lot. Let's talk about the marriage stuff. How does being married affect and benefit those things?
So I think, let's see. It definitely, so there's definitely probably, I think the most frequent element is that we talk about everything. And I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier of like, we will discuss everything. And a lot of people, if they are like in the car when we're talking about something, they will think that we're mad at each other. But we just get like very passionate about stuff. And to a point where I'm like, we're driving and I'm like, I can't believe that. And it's like, if we're talking about like youth kids and I'm just like, you get so passionate where you're just like, you get into it. And like, if you've had a difficult, night volunteering and you're like, I just want these kids to understand, or they do understand. And then they go and like, they mess up and you're just like, I just want to talk to these kids, and we get very passionate about. And so we talk about everything, sermons, family, just literally rant books and like movie. We'll just, any topic we'll talk about and dive into. And I think that is just super, like, I don't know, it's always bonding every time we talk about something, but at the same time, we're always on the same page, but also from slightly different perspectives, which I think is what makes it so good, because every time we'll agree on something, but then we'll each will like, well, I think, it makes me think about this. And then the other person's like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And so that a lot of times, and me having a creative brain is always like viewing 10 possibilities at the same time of everything. And then Tori will come in and be like, well, did you think about like this one, which was like not on my radar, even though I'm thinking like, oh, I can see all sides of this from all perspectives. And, because a lot of times it's like, oh, I can see where this. And Tori's like, well, what about the person that you're going to say that to? How do you think that makes them feel? And I'm like, oh yeah, just a lot of those, like, that happens all the time. And so I think just having somebody that, one, to talk, like, just say for a church sermon, right? You listen to a sermon, you're like, that was really good. That makes me think about this. But then to take it another level where we are both living life side by side, and not just someone who's like, oh, well, for my family, we all do this. And so that doesn't really, this part of the sermon that meant a lot to you doesn't mean much to me. Whereas for us, it's like we live in the same house. We have the same kid, right? Like we have like our families are our families now. And we've spent so much time with the other one that it's family now. And so there's so many things that are the same that when it comes to how we view life through a spiritual lens, it is like we have each other there next to each other so that, right. I feel like I'm talking in circles here, but get what I'm saying, where it's like, there isn't much difference so that when we talk about a sermon, we can get very specific. When we talk about faith, we can get specific and hash out the details. And I don't have to explain, well, this means a lot to me because my family, this, that. And that means, and then the person goes, oh, well, my family's never done that. So I have no idea. And I can't really understand where you're coming from. It's like, we've been together 15 years, like, at which will in a few years be us together longer than like in our lives will be us together more than separately, which that's very interesting. But yeah, so I think on the spiritual side, just that is probably my favorite part of just a marriage, is that you do it together and you do it side by side. And there is not many other relationships that I think have that much just togetherness and understanding. And I could say one thing, or I could reference one thing and Tori would know it and the backstory and why it matters to me and like all of that stuff. And I think that is just, it's so valuable and so healthy too at the same time. Like, you talk to like new people and it's like, it's hard to go deep into stuff, but yeah, I think that's at least the first thing that came to mind with that.
Yeah, I think that all of that is so good and I think needs to be said more often. I think, right now where dating is, I am a single person. And I think what took me a very long time to understand is kind of what you're talking about, Zach, is like when I'm considering who I want to be with, what are the most important things? And I think I've now landed at a place that I think is biblical and healthy. And I think you guys are reaffirming it in what you're saying here, is that like the values need to match up before anything else matches up. Because if the values match up, then I can have these conversations. You can have these conversations. If you're listening to this and you're single and you're like, dating is so hard. And it's like, I want to find somebody who's similar to me, or blah, 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 loves to do fun stuff, blah, like same hobbies, all this stuff. No, find somebody with similar values, because then you can build on that, where it's like you can talk about all of these different things while coming at it from different experiences and still have something that is healthy. And I'll just say this, like being around you guys so often, you guys have, I don't think I even knew that you guys have been together for 15 years or knowing each other for 15 years, been together. And yeah, your guys' relationship is very inspiring, because it's like when you guys are in the room together, it's never a bad thing. Like I never have there's never like anything bad that happens, at least when I'm there. And maybe you're just putting on a good, I'm just kidding. No, like it's always a good thing. Like your relationship is so good. And like you've now created this son who is going to do incredible things as well. But, and I think that's what people want and are looking for. And so I think even this very short conversation today, I hope helps people go, I want that. And hopefully we've given some perspective into, well, this is how you can find it. Because I believe it's out there for everybody. I believe the institution of marriage is not a construct of man, but it is a gift from God. And he knows exactly what every single person needs. And maybe you guys can comment on this, because, and this is like where I get very passionate about marriage, is I believe marriage is the manifestation, the materialization of our invisible relationship with God, where it's like you become one. We become one with Jesus spiritually and within our souls, but we are not one with him physically yet, like in eternity. And so in this world, now we have this physical gift that is that oneness with another person. And so men, love your wives as Christ loves the church, and the reverse is the same. Then the church brides love your husbands as the bride would love Christ. And so maybe you guys can just talk about, maybe just each of you give like one answer of how you even see that playing out in your own marriage, of your relationship with Jesus manifesting physically in your relationship with each other, if that makes sense.
I think so there's kind of two things I'm thinking of which one is the first thing that pops in my head is the fact that when we met in high school, which is funny because we didn't really mention this much, but Tori did not like me right away in high school. And it's because I was very arrogant. And the process of me maturing through that arrogance was heavily influenced by Tori. And I feel like I could confidently say without Tori, today I would be very arrogant still. And I probably wouldn't understand why that's not okay. And so I think that process was not like a disciplinary, like, hey, we're going to talk about and we're going to like break this arrogance. It was a very like loving thing that took time. And it literally was just me like seeing and her explaining to me and just very patiently like, hey, when you say that, imagine if you were in that person's shoes and they said that to you. I was like, yeah, it pissed me off. And it's like, yes. Oh, and so that makes me think of like, that's, in my opinion, or in how I see it, is how the Lord like walks us through maturing. And I would say like we've been together 15 years, who I was 15 years ago, who I was 10 years ago, who I was 5 years ago. So I feel like the maturity difference is crazy. And it's like that time when Tori was like, oh, I wish he would pick up the pace. And it's like, if we got married then, I feel like there's just so much maturity difference like every year. It's just crazy. And like, that's just a personal goal of mine as well, is just to keep maturing. And I think that's how the relationship with Christ works, is like he matures you, but through love and through a way that I can look back and say, my walk with Christ, I look back and I'm like, I am not the person I was. I'm better. And I've like moved through things. And all of those things that were difficult to move through were just done through patience and love and time and understanding and like explaining and perspectives and all these things that change your heart in a way that's not like, hey, we're going to slap you on the wrist. You know what I mean? There's like two ways to teach someone. It's like, I'm going to punish you, or I'm going to like help you understand why and then you're going to want to do one instead of like being scared to do. And I think that's probably another thing in like a lot of relationships, is there's people who are like, it's the love and respect versus like, I'm afraid to like, that's the classic like old marriage. It's like, oh, the wife, I don't want to make her mad. It's like, and for me, and it's like, I want Tori to be happy, and I don't want her. She wouldn't want to do things to make me mad, not because she's like, oh, don't piss Zac off. It's more of like, oh, I'm going to do something nice for him. And he wouldn't want me to not do this or something. So I think in my perspective, that's like how it works, is that the relationship of us being together, maturing and growing together is a very like healthy, and it's just a different way that sets deeper, and lessons are learned deeper in a way that like are motivated and not just rules. Right. And so that's my view on that. Any thoughts?
No, I think that you hit it on the head with the patience thing, like being in a marriage, and even just like watching Zac be a dad too. And like the patience that you have to have, it totally changed my perspective of how God views us, and how long he is willing to wait for us to come to him. And so like Zac was saying, with like the arrogance and like the patience and the waiting and all of that, like it truly does display the Lord of like, I will wait here for eternity for you to come to me and to learn from me and all these things. And so that was like one thing with the marriage that the church and Christ and all of this is just patience. And I try to have a lot of patience, and Zac would probably say that I do have a lot of patience. But I do catch myself every now and then having to check and be like, no, I need to be patient. I need to be patient. But I see, even with like Christ, I see it more so as Zac as a dad, and the love that he has for Sebastian. And that just literally shows the image of what Christ does for us as his kids as well. And so taking a step back and seeing Zac interact with our son in a marriage, I'm just like, that's beautiful, right? And I'm like, oh, that's how Christ sees us as well. And like all the love in the world. Like there is probably nothing that Seb could do that would ever alter how much I love him. Disappointment, stuff like that, yeah, that would happen. But the love that I have for him is never ending, and it will never end. And so also seeing that manifest through Zac and Seb and see that love that he has for Sebastian, I'm like, oh, that's how Christ looks at us as well. So
it's good stuff. Love it. This is a great conversation, and I'm sure we will do it again. I hope we do it again. We can do it again because it's our podcast,
our studio, our podcast.
This is our YouTube channel. I don't care what you say. All right. Thanks for listening. Love you guys. Thanks for being here, Tori.
thank you.